All right. What's good with the YouTube of Convicts Perspective? It's your boy Big Flacco, smashing, dashing, sliding on through with what? As you already know, a little bit of energy. So let's get this cracking, people, man. We're trying to go a little bit different direction with the channel, man. As you guys already know, we talk a lot about prison gang stuff, Norteños, Nuestra Familia, Mexican Mafia, MA, other group factions. But what we're going to try to do a little bit more is talk about more of our personal experiences, man. And so we came up with a good topic, man. Some that, especially in the 80s and 90s, this occurred a lot, man. And we're going to call it prison removals gone wrong. And I know Rojo has a little bit of experience as well as myself, man. So we're going to straight break it on down and give the perspective of the reality of how these things used to occur back in the days.
Yeah, I'll do one first, man. We'll talk about my boy, man. Y'all know Mexican Mike was my boy. You know, we met in Santa Rita, in between the door, never seen each other, knew who each other were, developed a good relationship, started getting money, etc. I believe I've told this story, man. NF member who had got out of prison, named Chavo, Anthony Jacobs, ran off with a bundle that was worth about $28,500. Nobody knew at the time that this individual was a cooperating person. Nobody knew nothing. You know what I mean? We thought he was all good. He was in good standings. We didn't have nothing bad. So we gave him a chance to get some dough in his pocket, and it didn't work out. He ended up stealing it blatantly, with no question. Communications in the 90s were rough. There was no cell phones. Pelican Bay mail sometimes took as little as 7 days up to 29, 30. Serious business, especially if you were considered to be in an organization. Well, when I heard this happened, I immediately told everybody in my particular regiment that he had to go. Overstepping my boundaries a little bit, but I knew 1000% that it would be confirmed, because it was an overt act that couldn't be justified by any means whatsoever. You know, and furthermore, there was text messages that told us ha 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 bitch and things of that nature after the incident went down. Unfortunately, after attempting to locate this individual on numerous occasions in certain spots, couldn't find him. He put out word that Mexican Mike was no good and to be dealt with, being that it wasn't known that he wasn't no longer in good standings. His word was filtered as appropriate and needing to be followed as directed.
He's an NF member.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
So Mexican Mike gets a small little violation, ends up in West Block and Quinton. And he ended up getting hit behind Chavo's orders, which were the most bandito type orders ever. You know what I'm saying? So Mike gets hit. He's a beast. He gets hit on one of the upper tiers in the neck, actually nicked his jugular. Climbed down over the side of the rails to a different floor, fell out halfway down the tier. He got patched up. He survived. I'd say the reason about the mail in Pelican Bay is because as soon as this happened, I had to shoot word to my people, because he was an NF member. If he wasn't an NF member, my orders would have been, they wouldn't need to have been confirmed. But since at the time he was still a C in good standings, I had to ask permission. Even though I said, get him if you can, I'll deal with that later. I might get a verbal reprimand, but they'll be like, damn, you did the right thing. 100%, without a doubt. But Mexican Mike ended up getting hit for nothing. And look at this. Look at how bad this could have cost. What if this individual who provided massive amounts of income, not only for the group as a whole, but for a lot of individuals who weren't even involved in the group, just in the community, just friends, families. There's a lot of people. And this isn't known to a lot of people, man, how generous this dude was and how much he did for his people and the people of the community. He passed out food. He paid rents. He paid electricity bills. You know what I mean? He did all those things. He bought cars for people. You know what I mean? And what if this would have been an example of, oh man, they hit me, fuck them. That would have been a huge loss to the group as a whole, behind one individual making a horrible piece of shit call. And That's like the best example I know of a bad call, bad hit gone wrong.
That's what you call. He was trying to cover his tracks.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Mhm.
And the thing is he was already, come to find out, he was already doing this thing on the down low. It's like, bro, man, why don't you just wrap it up? And the funny thing is he was working with them people while this incident took place. It's like, did you report to your people that you just ran off with a brick? I mean, it's
So,
like, bro, come on,
what was
man.
what was Mexican Mike's status at that time? Was he a bro or
He was a bro, yeah. He was
on
basically
probation,
on
right?
probation. I had already sent his information to the Bay. You know what I mean? So he was already in the process of being schooled, and final word hadn't came back because he only made C status, man, right before his death. It took considerable amount of time for me to push and push and push, to get him, because it was on the streets. They don't know. You could get pulled on the streets, but it's not easy.
Yeah. No, I know. That's how they recruit. That's how they were recruiting people post Operation Black Widow. All of us at that time, they're recruiting out there in the streets. Yeah, bro. If he would have been a C, it would have been a wrap for whoever hit him. There'd have been no justification behind that, bro.
No, not even necessarily, bro. They're just following orders.
Yeah, that's true though, bro. But
I wouldn't have pushed the issue on them personally, me, even though that's my friend, just because, man, you got to follow orders, and I understand.
Yeah.
You can't. Some people ain't like that. Some people would have them hit, but me, I'd be like, hey, what are you gonna do? You get the piece of paper from a C that says to do this. You don't do it. It's you. That's that kill or be killed type of shit, bro.
Yeah. Now I know about a whole bunch of bad.
Accountable.
I know about a whole bunch of bad removals, man. I talked about one that happened over there in Queen Mas around 2003. I was the RSD there. The interim RC was an individual named Fernando Gonzalez, Fred Dog from Salinas, and we were getting everything back up to par. I mean, Lencho had just left, and our tobacco went to shit because of Lencho, man. He was smoking all our profits away, man. So it was an interesting arrangement to where Fred Dog was not housed with us. He was housed in the infirmary, but they allowed him to go to yard 6 in the walk-alone cages the same time we were out there. So this is how I used to be able to communicate him, because years later after you left, they built a new 6-yard, Rojo, and right next to the 6-yard was a whole bunch of walk-alone cages. So they had a special cage for him to where we could communicate. And so this is how we passed all kinds of missives, right? Now, there was an individual, right, that I had heard about in our county jail, right? That was a young soldado, young Nosarasa member. And I seen previous kites when I was in the county jail, when he was in the old jail, and he was striving, he was learning, man, but he didn't have all the educational attainments to understand what his status really was. So an individual from Redwood City gets hit. Okay. I want to say his name was Jesse. I forgot what it was, right? But I had already got a clearance kind of from that county jail, as well as through Santa Rita, that this individual was cleared of a statutory case based on the fact that he was at a young age. The girl was really about a year apart, and it was a personal issue between the parents not wanting him to be together, them having a baby together. So there was no type of due process or R&I. This dude hits reception center, submits his paperwork, right? They immediately started to not even communicate with this individual. The first charge that they had to have this dude, they ended up having him hit and removed. And the guys came in with a WILA, and it said sanctioned by it says sanctioned, and it has a star authority. You know what I mean? So I got the WILA, right? And I already looked at the writing. I already knew who it was. I get at the Garnoff Fred Dog, man. I'm like, man, I already know who this dude is, man. I said, so, okay. Let's have the dude got hit. He got basically hit, with a little razor blade. Really didn't hurt him. Really no scar, no nothing. They just hit him. It was a weak hit. You know what I mean? But still, the intent was there. But blood was shed. And that's one charge that 9 times out of 10, it's a grave violation. You know what I mean? You're jeopardizing a northerner's life. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to shed blood upon your own kind. But there is some wiggle room if you feel the individual salvageable. So I requested him to come to the hole numerous times. They tried to stage a fight, right? And in staging the fight, they ended up just getting separated and moved to different sections. It was like a weak fight. He couldn't get there. Finally, a cat came, that an individual named Sparky who had an NLR tattooed on him. So he ended up whacking this dude. So that put him in a little bit of good graces for doing that hit. So he finally gets back to the oil. He has a charge on him and everything, right? So I conducted my proper investigation with him. I got all his reports. It was a bad removal. You know what I mean? You know, you got to do your due. You got to give a person due process first and foremost, and you got to conduct proper R&I, which is research and investigation. At the same token, the only true authority there, you know, there's the back, the oil. That's headquarters for that prison. You know, any move, unless it's deemed an immediate threat, needs to come from the back. This guy could have been left out there. You could have got at us. We could have went through all the process. So it was a bad removal, man. Other removals I've seen, man, I've seen an individual, I came later, I heard about Chuckle getting hit from Stockton, I believe it was. Bad call. Wrong authority was in charge, took it personal. This dude was an NR member for years. And he sent some other young NR members that the authority in charge had recruited at that time, had him moved on. You know, I've also seen other removals too where they may have been the right call, but they were done wrong. You know what I'm saying? Where they put the attacker on the inmate, like Huicho, for instance, Luis Gonzalez, Huicho, when they tried to hit him and Quentin, right? He ends up dropping 2 or 3 of these dudes. You know what I'm saying? That's not how you do a removal. Another one happened, I sent 2 soldados on this one dude on the yard, on some cat named Chino from Manteca, right? You know, he had made threats against the household. He was acting like a J-cat. He was doing everything that he had done warranted me to have him physically removed because I felt he was a threat. And then I was going to send all my kites up to the bay as far as a whole, you know, investigational packet. But he was J-cat off, talking about that they were using low radio frequency waves to mess with his head. And he sent a kite to his next door neighbor, some cat named Jesse Turner from Tracy, called him a pussy 1-yarder, which is the white boy yard. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? He told the guard one time, I know what you're doing. You know what I mean? So I'm like, man, there's enough. This dude's been an NR member since the 80s. He's been around. He's put a lot in work, but he's out there indulging in dope. So his mental stuff is not there. Let me just have him physically removed instead of whacking him. But the dude was really with the shit. So in that process of the removal being wrong, we ended up losing 4 people on the yard that day. You know what I'm saying? They ended up taking me off the yard too. I ended up having to get involved, and I'm running the fucking whole prison. You know what I'm saying? We finally put him on tips, right? But luckily the video didn't show me because after I helped get him down, I backed on off the scene. The cameras couldn't get every angles, man. So it was a removal gone wrong, man. And that can happen, man. It's like if you have a wrong removal, doesn't necessarily have to be a bad call. It could be sending the wrong people on an inmate.
Yeah, I remember one, man, when I was on the 6 yard. I don't even know if I was a B yet, bro. I might have been a regular, you know, N. But this dude had came from North Block, and he had got hit. He had a nice one across his face, and he submitted his info. And granted, I wasn't involved in the process or none of this because of my status or lack thereof. But he submitted his info and said he's coming out to the yard. And, you know, and it was kind of like, everybody was like, oh, okay, well, this dude just got hit. His name's on the B&L. You know, be prepared if he comes to the yard to handle your business, you know. And he comes out to the yard and he's like, look, you know, that's my name. I am not that individual that, you know, that should be on this B&L. We have the same name. We're both from the same area, etc. Look, this is my CDC number. I go by this. And he called himself Sporty Red. He had another nickname as well, but he changed it 100% to Sporty Red because of the incident. But let's just say, because I don't remember the name, let's just give him a common name, Jose Hernandez. There was a Jose Hernandez from San Jose that was on the B&M, 100% without a doubt. They didn't do their due diligence, their proper research and investigation. And just because they seen a name in the hood, this dude, who it turns out had been a major contributor on the streets, you know, a very good friend of the O, and the things he's done and participating, and he got a nice one, bro, a disfiguring one, simply because of his name, bro. Because
Ooh,
people were put into a position of authority in North Block. You know, I don't think it was H and I'm pretty sure it was North Block. That man, they jumped the gun. You know, it's like, man, there's a lot of people with the same name. It's just how life is. If you have a unique name, you're unique. It's not going to happen to you. But if you have a pretty common name like Mike, Jose, Carlos, William, you know what I mean? There's a chance it could happen to you. But that's just people not. A lot of people are too quick, and that's an occurring thing behind the walls, and especially within our group, to deem and get rid of other people without due diligence. And that was a perfect example because he contributed on the streets. He was a hustler. He had put in work. You know what I mean? Made sacrifices. Now he gets blasted like he's just a piece of junk because of laziness.
Did he clear his name?
Oh yeah, they cleared him right there in the hole. Apologized to him. He accepted the apology like a gangster, bro. I admired that dude. I was like, fuck, bro. He had one from like here, like all through here, and then it started on the other side. Like they got
that was common in the 90s,
like,
bro.
I'd want to do something to somebody really, really bad, bro, if that happened to me.
Bro, that was a common thing in the 90s, bro, because on those yards, let's just keep it real. Most of the solid NR hermanos were already up in the bay. They were already validated. So you had these dudes that were NR members, but they were degenerates. It was a whole different practical situation back then, to where you had dudes that would be like degenerates. They'd want to be safeguarded. They want to run the yard. They want to do their dope. So anybody that would come that would pose as a threat, they would have removed. As well as there was a whole lot of other prisons, right? Like Avenal, Corcoran, all these other institutions, right? That you had those that were placed in authority positions. And when you're placed in an authority position, it doesn't mean that you're the ultimate authority. It means you're responsible to apply the laws as you know them, as they are supposed to be applied in accordance to all set procedures. So therefore, when you make a decision, you're supposed to be held accountable. So we were seeing numerous people that were coming from Corcoran, Avenal, Susanville, all these joints. And this is during the Operation Black Widow phase and pre-Black Widow phase. And see, there wasn't no really communication with the Bay. So it would be hard to get a filter there, right? So you'd have dudes that were getting in positions that because they had some animosity, because he had an attitude, because he didn't do what he was told, just the most frivolous little acts, you know what I mean, that you could give some type of corrective discipline. Or if they're not that much of an obstacle, just, you know what I mean? You know, things kind of changed a little bit. So you'd have people getting removed, and we'd get these BNLs from like Avenal, like I said, Corcoran, all these different places. And I would have RAs would come up and say, hey, this dude's on the BNL from this facility. I would look at it. I'd say, we can't honor that. That's coming from Avenal. We don't even know if there was an NR member that was even holding an authority position, let alone even if there was an NR member there. We don't know if he was upholding the law in accordance to what was expected.
Right.
So a lot of times we start running our investigations, we would find out that the reason why the dude was on the BNL was because he was out there in the yard, and the dude that had the yard wanted them to program with bulldogs. He stood against it. Next thing you know, he gets removed. You get what I'm saying? So there was a lot of things like that were going on in the 90s where you had degenerates that were on these yards. There was no SNY back then. Right. Let's get it straight. The SNY stuff, I think we did a little spill on it. And I think the article was from 2003 or 2004 that we read. There was only 3 SNY yards at that time, I believe. You know, I think it was Lancaster, Mill Creek, and I forgot the other one. And there was a couple of ones that were program designated yards that had a lot of trash on them. So you could go to any yard, and because of the validation process back in the early 90s of validating structure members, the dudes that were running those yards were usually degenerates, bro, that were working with that administration. And if you weren't politically involved and you were just a regular Northenian, they didn't push politics back then. There was really no HSPs or none of that. So you just went there and did your time. And if things went a certain way, you get off. So I remember the yard I was on back in the 90s, man, the dude was no good. Ramon Arriaga, Tito from Stockton. This dude was so smooth, right, that he had built a wall around himself, right? he had started to recruit young dudes that were worthy individuals that were striving because he was so educated. You know what I mean? He had a good way of teaching people. So he was able to recruit people as NR members back then. And then when someone came to the yard that was in opposition to them, 90% of the time, man, you know what ended up happening? They were getting took into the hole. You know what I mean? And there were certain things that were going on at the time, man. So those are the type of things. Prison removals, man, back in the days, man, were just like how Rojo said, man. It was either personal, they didn't do their homework, or just shit happens. And now you're having a whole different type of scenario now, currently. Things are a little bit different. You can't have no SNY or dropouts hitting these main lines no more. It's just not going to happen. But what you are seeing is you're having people loyal to the feds, people loyal to the state. Or you're having internal politics within the L, where you're having certain NF members moved on, and they're being moved on by Northerners and soldados. You've had Knockers got hit. Knockers got hit, of course. Who else got hit? We already know about Baby Joker. Mateo got hit. Capone got hit. A whole bunch of C's got hit. And I think the majority of the ones that were doing these removals were not even NF members. You know, the only exception that I know, right, of them, this is another removal that went wrong. Corny and Cuete and them, they sent Armando Quinn, Raul Quinn. I mean, that's his real name, but he goes by Armando Quinn. They sent him in the cell to move on Big Smiley. One of them came out with a broken arm. But the whole purpose for Armando Quinn to go in that cell was to take out Big Smiley, and his NF status was going to be sanctioned at that point forward. So that's going to be the only exception. Having an Soldado moving on an NF member is if they're going to be put up as a C if they make that kill. Other than that, man, they shouldn't be using regular manpower to deal with NF business.
You know what I found? You know, there's a lot of other examples I could use, and I'll tell one more after I make this point, man. Is a lot of it had to do in my time with the lack of communication. That's why we're always stressed. Establish lines of communication. It's part of establishing a household. It's part of running a household. Communication is essential, and that avoids things like this, and it removes the threat of the opposition, you know, or an actual person who needs to be dealt with from being dealt with. You know, it makes that possible. It makes, you know what I'm getting at. Communication is essential nowadays with the cell phones. Man, the stuff's happening in live time. In our days, it wasn't like that, man. If there was a questionable person on the yard, it could literally take months to get an answer. You know, like I said, man, people who were considered to be in an organization up there, I had mail one time that was 35 days. Real talk. So let's just go with the soft average. Let's just say 18 days is about how long it took to get the mail almost on a routine basis in my time, 95, 96, 97, 98 in Pelican Bay. If it takes 15 days for them to get it, 1 day to respond, they usually hold on to it for a couple days there as well. So let's just say a week going back out. That's a month turnaround minimum. Then if you're in another facility, it might take a week for you to get it. You know, so we're already into 2 months, man. You know, and if there's information that, okay, say for example, this dude messed up at Tehachapi. You're in Quentin trying to figure out what to do with this. You got to write Tehachapi to do your proper research. However long that mail takes, you may or may not have authority to make a decision on this person. So then after you get your stuff, you might have to write Tehachapi again to ask more questions. Then you got to write out your stuff, send it to Pelican Bay. We're talking months and months and months. And that's where a lot of these issues became, with people sliding through that weren't supposed to slide through, as well as people getting hit who weren't supposed to get hit. The last one I'm going to tell about a bad removal, man, it's kind of a weird one because, you know, when I first said it, you'll think, oh, how's that a bad hit? Well, I'll tell you. Dude came into Quentin one time, had an R on his jacket. He was convicted of rape. Hit him immediately. Right away. Word came with the county that he had a rape conviction. They didn't do no research. Seems pretty slam dunk, right? Nah, check it out. He was married to the woman. They lived in the same house. There has been repeated domestic violence allegations that the individual was found not guilty. There had been 2 charges against the woman for filing a false police report against this dude, 1 misdemeanor, 1 felony. Okay. Dude comes and says, man, this is my wife. She's bipolar and she's paranoid schizophrenic. You know, when he starts talking about his case after why he got hit, he didn't go nowhere. You know what I mean? He stayed and tried to fight his case from the hole. And he went up, man, he submitted, like a 9-page mini written thing about his whole history, bro. And there was no way the dude was not telling the truth. Like, man, reading that stuff, I was just like, wow, this poor dude, bro. The reason he got his prison case, the damn old lady snitched on him for a robbery. He stuck by her because she was mentally ill and he felt bad and she had nowhere to go. And it ended up costing him a prison term. It ended up costing him numerous trips to jail on domestic violence allegations and you name it, bro. His life was fucked because of his loyalty to a mentally ill woman that wasn't always mentally ill. He ends up getting cut for it. I cleared him.
Yeah.
He was telling me the truth, 100%. If you would have hooked him up with a lie detector test, he would have passed with flying colors. That boy had a rough life. And yeah, I get it, the charges. It's a fucked up charge, man. But you still gotta take that time. Ask him. Most people with that charge, especially homeboys that have been in jail before, they know that, hey, I better go to PC if I got this charge. That boy went to the main line because he didn't do nothing wrong, and he didn't.
I got one more story about that, man. There was an individual from Hollister. There was paperwork that surfaced on him, right? That a cop that was out there doing scandalous stuff. There was no interview. There was no nothing. There was no proof of him actually making these statements to the cop. It was cops' word against his. These dudes had him removed at another place. So a dude vouched for him when I was there in Queen Mas, an individual named Boy. You probably know Boy. He was always in the 6-yard back in the days, man. He's probably in his 50s, almost 60 now.
Frisco?
No, from Hollister.
I don't know.
Okay, he's a worthy northerner. You know what I mean? Never got pulled as a bro, but been around, been validated forever. Really solid dude, man. He got at me and vouched for the dude, man. He goes, look, man. He goes, this cop's did a lot of scandalous stuff out there in the streets. You know, they did a shooting, whatever. He took the rap for it. He pled guilty. No one else got busted. But the cop tried to say he made statements when they tried to push the charges on his co-defendants. But the dude ended up taking the whole deal. He ended up filing a citizen's complaint against the officer for endangering his life. So with everything there and looking at the paperwork, there was no proof that this dude made any statements. It was his word against a cop's word. There was no video. There was no prelim trial. There was no nothing. So I'd like to salvage his career and clear him. Give him the benefit of the doubt. And that's exactly what Rojo's saying is you got to conduct proper research and investigation. You got to give the person due process. Just because you see an improper statement, you got to look into it deeper. Because nowadays they have body cameras. Nowadays they're supposed to take you into an interview room where they're videotaping the whole thing. Not these on-site statements because they can lie at any time. And anybody that's been arrested by a cop understands they will lie their teeth out sometimes. Not, like I said, not every cop, but there's cops out there that will do that. You know what I mean? So that's a prime example. But further, man, I want to touch a little bit more on this. And this is something that when I used to recruit people as Nuestra Raza members, right? And sanction, and you know what I mean, get their status sanctioned, pull them. I used to school them on this because there was new mandates that came up from the Bay. And it was that all removals were supposed to be done with a weapon. Not no tomahawk, but a piece. But what I would tell everybody, right, is if you ever have someone that is a potential threat and you don't know, but you don't have the charges enough to find them guilty, but you feel that they're becoming a detriment on household functions, it's better to remove them with hands and submit your reports to a higher authority and let them decide what they want to do with that person. Because everybody is awarded due process. You know what I mean? If someone comes in, they're young, they're a first termer, and they're making waves, they're being a headache, and they're not doing their discipline, have them smash first, have them be brought back to the oil and be put under investigation. Give them that chance to be given that opportunity. Yeah, because once you, huh? Yeah, because
get back, yeah.
And I explained to him, I said, you know what? I go, yeah, I understand there's the mandate that all removals have to be done with a weapon, but we're not deeming the dude no good. He's a head case, needs to be he needs to be educated, and we need to give him the opportunity to see if he wants to be with us. So why don't you physically remove him before you have him hit? Now, if they've done some grave violations, you know what I mean, straight breach in law, which, you know, the main factors would be bond 4, bond 7, bond 12. You know what I mean? Every time that's going to be the charges that are going to get you deemed no good. And even sometimes bond 5 if you go against an NF authority. You know, you have to look at the charges against them. And once you know that there's no salvaging their career and this is coming from a higher authority, then you hit them with a piece. But if they're just a headache and you really are new in your schooling, your education, and you see them violating certain bonds, it's better for you to have them removed hands-on, because if you have them hit and that investigation goes to process to a higher authority, they may not agree with the decision you made. Therefore, it will be you that's in violation of law. It'd be you that could be deemed no good. Same situation that happened to Chino from San Juan. His repercussions were a little bit different, though. I stripped him of his NR status, put him on frontline status, DP'd him, and that was it. And he was not to hold any type of chain of command position until he was deemed worthy to get the educational attainments. You know, because I always felt like it was better to salvage a career. And like you said, Roland, you get those dudes that just want to make that call to be that guy. You know what I'm saying? I had a hard time just you know what I mean? I had an understanding that not everybody is going to function on the same level of awareness and discipline. Even though it says it in the HHP, so every household member or every soldado, every northerner will function on the same level of awareness and discipline. But the reality is that each one has different type of understanding and comprehension of that.
No doubt.
So you got to it's different strokes for different folks. And that goes with removing people as well. I've had situations where I had to do remove because he was in the system for about 12 years and he did a cowardice act. He was with a first termer. I was going to give the first termer the benefit of the doubt because they didn't know better. He knew better. So that's the difference with these removals, man. You just got to really take into consideration, man. I'm just glad that we're no longer part of that life. We don't have to worry about, you know what I mean, our necks or our side getting hit, bro.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, nothing's perfect, and it's not a shout against anybody in particular or any group in particular, because it's going to happen in all groups. It's just you can't always be perfect, man, but everybody could do a better job. You know,
I got a question for you.
It was hard in the 90s, man.
I got a question for you. So what do you think about all these removals, right, by these dudes that are hitting certain C's that are loyal to the state, to the feds and that are in the state? What do you think is going to happen to those northerners and soldados that do these movidas?
Hopefully nothing, bro, because they're just following orders, you know, but in order to alleviate that, they should probably handle their own business.
You get what I'm saying, though?
No, I get it 100%, man. Hopefully, bro, for them individuals, there's no repercussions, bro. You got to follow your orders because your life's in jeopardy as well.
I got another example, bro, of that, bro. So, you know Mark Caja Rodriguez, right?
Yeah.
He comes to Queen Mas, Huicho leaves, Dancing Bears on walk alone. Caja comes to the yard. He's trying to run everything. He's trying to get moved to East Block. So I go to visit, and he was coming back from yard or somewhere, right? So he's in Carson section, but when I come back, I go right by the, you know where the sergeant office is on the first tier in East Block?
Yeah.
I go right by there. He's in the office with him. Right? So he comes by my cell, bro. And like, this is the authority in charge, bro. And he comes by and he looks at me with fucking like, oh, I'm trying to get moved over to the East Block, like paranoid and shit. I'm like, man, something ain't right, bro. So the next thing you know, bro, we're on yard and he's just being a tyrant, bro, abusive, everything. There's no C's there or anything to question him or anything, right? He's over there talking to all the high power dropouts, the same ones that are talking shit about actives on the tier all night, the bad ones. Not, I mean, I get it if piecing like Huicho or someone like that was no good, or you know what I mean, Copas, you know what I mean? It'd be, I mean, I could see talking to him to the fence. You can't get to them, but you're gonna just hear what they have to say. These dudes were the worst of the worst. These were the ones that when it was shut down, they were like, hey, bro, you're a bitch. These were those these dropouts, you know what I mean? These were like the YouTube trolls of today, but on the first tier fucking at that time. He's over there with Art Tobacco, that we had a pouch every yard. You remember that, a pouch for the household to get frajos? Giving them all our cigarettes, right? So there was a few brothers on the yard. We were seeing his behavior. They wanted to hit this dude. You're like, man, this dude's fucking in violation of every fucking thing, you know what I mean? And I told them, I said, look, bro, I go, we can't, all we could do is report this. I'll report this when I get out. But if we touch this dude because he's an NF member, if we hit this dude, this whole fucking yard's gonna be no good. You know what I mean? So I get out there to the streets. Now check this out. He knew I was getting out to the streets. He knew I was plugged into the regiment, right? He knew all that. He had gave me all kinds of stuff before this. As soon as I get out there, I go to file all my reports, right? About everything he was doing. A week later, he locked it up. You know?
He knew what he was doing.
No, he knew what he was doing, bro. You know what I mean?
Whole world.
You know, but yeah. Funny thing though, bro, is yeah. I ended up coming up on all his bomb wear shirts. So before that though, at his house, I had someone go over there before I got out to pick up these shirts. You know what I mean, he sure as hell didn't get 1 penny from me.
Nah, hell no. Shit.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was one of the ones you seen coming, but you couldn't really even do nothing about it.
Couldn't do nothing about it, bro. And then when we talked to, I think we talked to Bubba about it afterwards, right?
Yeah.
And Bubba goes, yeah, bro. He goes, I'm glad you made that decision because if you would have, they would have had no choice but to deem me no good. Everybody. You know what I'm saying?
There was one named Marty Lomas from Sanjo that came through like that too, bro.
That's Flacco, right?
Yeah. Just a straight fucking piece of shit, bro. Fucking came out there trying to, oh, I'm a cat 3 and just one of those kind of dudes, bro. Like, dude, you're a clown, dude. What are you talking about? You know, but you know, by the time I had sent a little report up north, he was already gone. You know, he didn't lock it up. He just went somewhere else. You know, but I knew the first day he came on the yard, I knew something was up with the dude. You know what I mean? It happens. So yeah, sometimes there's nothing you can do about it, especially when it's a secret.
Yeah.
You know, you just got to wait for the people who have.
Bro, there's so many other removals I've seen, dudes. Just a lot of more physical removals. You know what I mean? In the '90s, dudes were getting rolled up off. When you got rolled up off the floor, it means they just took off on you. You know what I mean? And you'd hear about a dude going from one place, from the old jail to M2, back to the new jail, and then finally at the 4th floor they get their name cleared. You know, there was no like S&Y back then. There was really no PC back in those days, man. So it was a whole different type of a scenario. You know, there was nowhere to go. If you were a dropout, they used to put you out there in those yards, believe it or not. So a lot of them used to actually say that they were Native American or they were other. They used to hide behind that. And you'd have dudes that were way back from the 60s and 70s, man, that had been dropped out since the mid 70s, and you wouldn't even know it.
In the sweat lodge.
Yeah, man, they'd be out there in the yard with you, man.
Yeah. Oh, those were the days. All right, YouTube, man. We probably got some more. We'll think about it. Maybe we'll do another episode on some of these strange calls, man. But the times have changed. You know, there was a lot of poor communication and a lot of weird yard situations, and there was all kinds of factors that made it real difficult. You know, so some of them, man, were probably not intentional, but don't get it twisted. Some of them were. They were the results of animosity, you know, jealousy, general dislike for somebody based on personal feelings, you know. But it happens, man. It happens within every group, man. There's gonna be bad calls. Everything can't be perfect, you know. So anyway, we just wanted to share those ones that we knew that we haven't really talked about before. And we'll be back at you with some more little personal experiences, man, type things, man. Y'all have a good day, YouTube. I'll see you on live later.